Hey there, how's it going? It's good to check in again. Last time I talked about um, scripted prayer, so today I wanted to just touch in on spiritual disciplines again as a whole. I've been reading a book by James Smith called On the Road with St. Augustine, and in it, he explores this whole idea of authenticity and sincerity, and those are kind of the clarion calls almost of our culture, where we equate, uh, expressing something that comes from within us as being more genuine, more sincere, more authentic. Um, Fleetwood Mac years ago saying, "You can go your own way," um, and yet we're not all Dennis Rodman, and so. In our efforts to strive to be unique, to want to be true to the core of who we are, sometimes we think spiritual disciplines don't really fit with that because, as I mentioned last time, spiritual disciplines are like jigs. They're by repetition, they lead you towards a desired goal. Now, the jig of spiritual disciplines is that we learn from those who have walked down the path before us. They have journeyed this road, and so we are learning from their habits, from their disciplines, from their routines, and we can actually learn how to be genuine and sincere and authentic and true to ourselves, even as we follow someone else. I can be both authentic and sincere while I walk along the path that someone else has kind of traveled ahead of me in the journey. And so, whether it's scripted prayer, even communion, right? There's a particular pattern that is followed every time we participate in the Lord's table. Or whether it's my participation, say, even in a recovery group, there are certain rituals that are part of participating in a group like that lead to freedom. They're not necessarily the quick fixes or solutions that we so often long for. And I think even there, we think freedom is freedom from something that has somehow shackled us. And it's about casting off all the restraints. And so we tend to view freedom only from a perspective of being free from something and not free towards something. And we've romanticized this idea of the road less traveled, the famous poem by Robert Frost. And somehow that if we forge our own path, it is more true, more real, more sincere, and I can be a more authentic self as I do that. And that's not necessarily the case. Spiritual disciplines help us by repetition achieve a desired goal. Two other things that I wanted to just quickly touch on today. Spiritual disciplines have an aspect of self-care involved in them. So as I participate in a particular spiritual discipline, it is about me becoming healthy as an individual, as a follower of Christ. But it is more than that. In some of my reading recently, I came across somebody else who's doing a review about a book that was talking about spiritual disciplines are for the sake of the other. And I think we can learn from that. And I know certainly for myself, there's certain spiritual disciplines that I can gravitate towards that they're easy for me, or they come more natural, or they align themselves closely to my temperament and my personality. If we look at just the whole thing of being an introvert or an extrovert, we fall into either one of those camps, right? And I think we sometimes are confused about what those things actually mean. Being an introvert doesn't mean you don't like people. Being an introvert means that you are energized by being by yourself. So for me, being an introvert there are certain spiritual disciplines that lend themselves quite nicely to that orientation. Things like silence and solitude, those are things that kind of they resonate with my inner being, and yet they might not necessarily be the best disciplines in order to help me to become more Christ-like and other-centered. Certainly they will do a lot for my own interior, and so that's another thing to kind of pay attention to when you're looking for a particular spiritual discipline to participate in, is to not just go after that which, is just easy and resonates with you all the time, and that continues to kind of build up your own kind of self-esteem. Because spiritual disciplines, even though, as I said, they have that aspect of self-care intuitively built into them, they're not strictly just for your own benefit. They are for you to grow as a disciple of Christ and to become more Christ-like. And as we look at Christ's example, we see that he wasn't preoccupied with his own sense of self and well-being. He was there for the sake of other people. And so I challenge you, as you look at spiritual disciplines, find some disciplines that will help equip you to be who God is calling you to be, not just for your own self and for your own sake and for your own health, but also for the sake of the other. Anyways, that's all I'm going to leave with you today. Thanks.